The last time my dad looked me in the eyes, he knelt down and whispered, "You'll always be my little man." Then he got into his truck and drove away. I was 10. My little sister, Emily, was 4. We didn't see him again for nearly a decade. By the time he came back, everything in our lives was already shattered. Our mom, Karen, was never much of a mother. She screamed a lot, slammed doors hard enough to make the walls shake, and blamed us for everything that went wrong in her life. She was selling pills out of the garage in our small town of Dayton, Ohio, and she forced us to lie to neighbors when people got suspicious. By the time I was 18, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the cops on her. Not because I was trying to be a hero, honestly, I was terrified, but because I wanted Emily safe. Mom was arrested that night. Dad was still gone. That left me. Suddenly, at just 18 years old, I became the legal guardian of my little sister. I dropped out of my senior year of regular high school, switched to online classes, and got a job stocking shelves at the local grocery store. Then I picked up shifts at a gas station, too. I'd pick Emily up from elementary school every day, help her with homework, cook cheap dinners, and sometimes skip meals myself so I could afford her birthday cake. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have support. But Emily and I had each other. And that was enough. Somehow, the state put us into a program that gave me a small stipend, about $1,800 a month, for guardianship. It barely covered groceries and bills, but it was the only reason we survived. For a while, I thought maybe things were going to be okay. Then one night, when I was 19, Dad showed up. I'll never forget it. Emily and I had just finished dinner. Mac and cheese again. There was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there he was, our father, Mark. He didn't look broken or lost like I'd imagined all those years. He looked healthy. Fresh clothes, polished shoes, clean haircut. He said the danger was over now. He said he wanted to make things right. At first, I didn't believe him. But he kept showing up. He came to Emily's 5th grade play, sat in the back, and actually clapped. He helped pay a late electric bill when I was drowning. He fixed the broken lock on our apartment door when we couldn't afford a locksmith. He told me, "You deserve to live your own life now, Tyler. You should go to college, make something of yourself. Let me take care of Emily. She deserves stability, and you deserve freedom." And against all my instincts, I started to believe him. He said he wasn't perfect, but he was here now. And maybe, just maybe, he had changed. So when he asked for temporary custody, I said yes. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was giving Emily the chance at a normal childhood. I quit both of my jobs, packed my things, and moved 3 hours south to live with my grandparents in Cincinnati. I hugged Emily goodbye, kissed her forehead, and promised I'd see her soon. Dad promised he'd move closer too, so she wouldn't be alone. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe. But just a few weeks later, the phone rang. It was Emily. Her voice was shaking. She said Dad was taking the stipend money, the only thing meant for groceries and bills, and blowing it on booze and pills. She said there were strange men in the house every night. Men who stared at her. Who made comments. Who tried to touch her. And when she told Dad, his response was to blame her. He told his 13-year-old daughter, if you didn't wear shorts, they wouldn't act like that. My blood went cold. I packed a bag the next morning and called my dad to tell him I was coming to get her. He blocked my number. And then I found out what he'd been telling the rest of the family, lies so vicious they made me the villain. He said I'd abused Emily when I had custody. He said I'd stolen the stipend money for myself. He said he was the one who stepped in to protect her. And people believed him. My aunt stopped answering my texts. Friends I'd grown up with unfollowed me on social media. Even family members I thought might be on my side turned away. Suddenly, after years of sacrifice, after raising Emily on my own, I was the monster. And Emily, my little sister who once clung to me like I was her whole world, stopped answering my calls. I thought I'd lost her forever. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Not even close. When Emily stopped answering my calls, I didn't know what else to do. For weeks, I told myself maybe she was scared. Maybe she wasn't allowed to talk. Maybe she didn't hate me. But late at night, I'd replay her words over and over, her shaky voice telling me about those men in the house, about Dad blaming her for it. Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened like I couldn't breathe. I was her brother. Her guardian. The one who raised her. And now everyone believed I was the danger. With no one left to turn to, I did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I went to see my mom. Karen had been locked up for almost 2 years by then. I hated her for what she'd done to us, for forcing us to lie, for choosing her addictions over her kids, but she was still the only one who knew my dad better than I did. The prison visiting room was freezing. When she walked in, she smirked at me like she'd already won something. "You look tired, Tyler," she said, dragging the chair out and sitting across from me. I clenched my jaw. Emily's in danger. Dad has her. He's spending the stipend money on pills and booze. There are men in the house. She cut me off with a laugh. "Oh, honey. Maybe you got what you deserved." My fists curled under the table. For a second I almost got up to leave. But then her smirk faded, and she leaned forward. "You want to know the truth," she said, lowering her voice. "Your father was the one who got me into dealing. He was running stuff long before I ever touched it. Then he made a bad deal, skipped town, and left me holding the bag. You think he came back now because he loves that little girl? No. That man only comes back when there's something to take." Her words hit me like ice water. The second I left the prison, I drove straight back to our old neighborhood in Dayton. I started asking around, at corner stores, at gas stations, anywhere someone might have seen him. Most people shut me down. "Don't stir up drama," one guy muttered, practically shoving me out of his store. But then I walked into a bodega I hadn't stepped inside since I was a kid. The new owner, a girl about my age named Jasmine, looked up as soon as I walked in. "You're Mark's son, right?" she asked. The words made my stomach twist. "Yeah." She glanced at the door, then motioned for me to follow her into the back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My dad used to own this place before he passed. A few months ago, I was cleaning out his office and found a ledger. And some tapes. He was blackmailing people, recording drug deals out back, collecting hush money." My pulse quickened. "One name kept showing up in the ledger," she said. "Your dad's." Over and over. Same handwriting, same amounts. She handed me a dusty showbox filled with old VHS tapes and a notebook covered in grease stains. "Take them. I don't want anything to do with this. Just looking at it makes me feel sick." Back at my grandparents' house, I spent hours going through the tapes. Most were grainy, filmed behind the store. Deals going down. Hands exchanging bags. And then I found it, the one that made my stomach drop. It was dated just weeks before Dad came back into our lives. There he was, clear as day, standing behind the bodega with a bag in his hand. He glanced over his shoulder, grinned at the camera like he knew he was being recorded, and said, "Gotta clean up. Got caught next week." Caught. Next week. He knew exactly when the heat was coming down. He hadn't come back for us. He'd come back because he needed cover. The next morning, I brought everything to the police. For once, they actually listened. They opened an investigation. 2 weeks later, they arrested him at Emily's middle school. I was granted temporary custody again. When Emily saw me at the courthouse, she broke down crying. She apologized over and over, saying she was sorry for everything she said, sorry for not calling, sorry for believing him. She asked me the one question I couldn't answer honestly. "Are we safe now?" I told her yes. But deep down, I wasn't sure. A few days later, I tried to do something normal for once. I went on a date with Jasmine, the girl from the corner store who gave me the tapes. She made me laugh. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could start living again. But halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered, and my blood froze. It was Dad. His voice was low, seething. You think you've won? I made bail. You'll regret everything. And then, in the background, I heard it. Emily. Screaming. The second I heard Emily screaming in the background of that call, my body went numb. I bolted out of the restaurant, barely remembering to throw some cash on the table. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn my car keys. The dispatcher on 911 kept saying, "Slow down, sir, we're sending units." But I couldn't. All I could hear was Emily's voice, terrified, begging for help. I made it back to our apartment in record time. The door was wide open. Drawers yanked out. Clothes thrown everywhere. Our living room looked like a tornado had torn through it. On the floor lay Emily's stuffed rabbit, the one I'd worked 3 weeks of gas station shifts to buy her for her 5th birthday. One of its ears was ripped clean off. That sight hit me harder than anything. I tore through every room screaming her name. Nothing. No sign of her. No sign of him. Outside, I ran to the neighbors. Mrs. Jenkins next door said she'd seen him dragging Emily to his truck an hour earlier. She thought it was just a tantrum. I wanted to scream at her. How could she think that was normal? But there wasn't time. The cops showed up 5 minutes later, but they didn't move fast enough. One of them even asked if I was sure this wasn't just a custody dispute. I showed them the tapes, the ledger, everything. I told them about the men in the house, about Emily's phone calls. Finally, they seemed to get it. They put out an Amber Alert. But sitting in that trashed apartment, waiting for news, I knew deep down I couldn't trust them to move quickly. And then I remembered something. Weeks earlier, during one of Emily's shaky phone calls, she'd mentioned Dad taking her to the cabin. She said it was where his business friends hung out. At the time I brushed it off as a kid's imagination. But now? Now it felt like the only lead I had. The problem was, I had no idea where the cabin was. So I called the one person who might know, my mom's old friend Tanya. She used to run with both my parents back in the day. At first, she didn't want to talk. She said she was done with that life. I begged her. Told her Emily was in danger. Finally, she broke. There's a hunting cabin about 2 hours north, out near Lake Shelby. Mark used to take his guys up there to party. If he's hiding her, that's where she'll be. The drive felt endless. Every bump, every pothole, made my chest tighten. I kept seeing Emily's face in my mind, scared, small, trapped with him. It reminded me of something I'd tried to bury. I was 12 the first time Dad left us alone for days. Mom was strung out in the garage, and Emily was barely 6. She'd crawled into my bed at night, clutching that same rabbit, whispering, "Tyler, don't let him leave again." Back then, I told her he'd come back. That everything would be okay. I'd lied. And now here we were again, only this time, I couldn't lie to her. I had to get her out. By the time I found the dirt road leading to the cabin, the sun was going down. I killed my headlights and parked half a mile away, heart pounding so hard I thought it would give me away. I walked through the trees, every twig snap sounding like a gunshot. And then I saw it. Dad's old blue truck, parked right outside the cabin. A single light glowed from inside. Through a dirty window, I saw Emily curled up on a couch, hugging her knees to her chest. My dad paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly at her like she was the problem. My stomach twisted. I had no plan. No weapon. Just me. I circled the cabin and found a back door. It looked weaker than the front. I waited until Dad disappeared into the bathroom, then grabbed a chunk of firewood from the stack and slammed it against the doorknob. The crack echoed through the woods. I froze. Nothing. I slammed it again. The lock gave way. The door swung open. Emily's eyes went wide when she saw me. I pressed a finger to my lips. She nodded and stood up slowly. But just as she took a step toward me, the bathroom door opened. Dad stepped out, phone still in his hand. His eyes locked on me, and twisted with rage. "You little piece of garbage," he snarled. I lunged for Emily, grabbed her arm, and pulled her toward the door. But Dad was faster. He yanked me back by the shirt and slammed me against the wall so hard the frame cracked. "Run, Emily!" I shouted. She froze for a second, then bolted. Dad turned to chase her, but I tackled him from behind. We crashed through the coffee table, wood splintering under us. He was stronger than me, always had been. He flipped me over and pinned me down, his fist connecting with my jaw. Stars exploded in my vision. "You ruined everything," he spat. "The money. The connections. You had to play hero." Through the haze, I heard it, the roar of my car engine outside. Emily had made it. She'd gotten to the car. For one split second, Dad's head snapped toward the sound. And that was all I needed. I grabbed a jagged piece of the broken table and swung it at his head. The crack made my stomach turn. He stumbled, blood dripping down his temple, but still conscious. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the back door. Emily sat in the driver's seat of my car, shaking but alive. I jumped in, slammed the gear into drive, and tore down the dirt road, gravel spraying behind us. In the rearview mirror, Dad stumbled out of the cabin, screaming something I couldn't hear. Blood running down his face. His eyes locked on me like a promise. For 10 minutes, the car was silent except for Emily's quiet sobs. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. When we finally hit the main road, I pulled over and called 911, telling them everything. The cabin. The fight. The fact that my dad had a gun in the house. They told me to drive to the nearest police station. I looked at Emily, her face pale, her hands gripping that rabbit with one ear. She looked at me like I was her last hope. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't over. Not even close. At the police station, I thought maybe things would finally calm down. An older deputy named Wilson took our statements. He didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss me, didn't act like I was some overreacting kid. He even took photos of my bruises, the cuts on my hands, the purple swelling on my jaw. Emily clung to my arm the entire time, too scared to let go. When it was her turn to speak, she told Wilson everything, about the men in the house, the nights Dad left her alone, the threats. She was trembling, but her voice was steady. For the first time in months, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. That hope didn't last. Child Protective Services showed up not long after. A woman named Ramirez with a clipboard and a tight bun pulled Emily into another room to talk privately. I waited, knee bouncing, praying they wouldn't separate us. When Ramirez finally came back, her face was unreadable. "For now," she said, "Emily has to be placed in emergency foster care while we sort this out." My chest dropped. "What?" "No, I'm her guardian, I've had custody before." She held up a hand. "You can apply for emergency reinstatement, but it takes time. The system has to follow procedure." Emily started crying. Begging. "Please, I just want to stay with my brother." But Ramirez didn't budge. I felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. After everything we'd just survived, they were tearing us apart anyway. Wilson must have seen the look on my face, because he suggested a compromise. "There's a family in town we trust. The Morgans. They take emergency placements. You can stay close by, get a motel room, and see her every day while this gets sorted." It wasn't perfect. But it was better than nothing. So that night, Emily was placed with the Morgans, a couple in their 50s with kind smiles and a neat little blue house just a few blocks from the station. I got a dingy motel room down the road. I promised Emily I'd see her first thing in the morning. I promised I wouldn't leave town. I promised I'd fix this. She clung to me like she used to when she was little. "Don't disappear," she whispered. Her words cut me deeper than any bruise. The next day, I visited. Emily looked tired, but safe. The Morgans seemed normal enough. Mrs. Morgan offered me coffee. Mr. Morgan cracked dad jokes and told Emily she could call him Uncle Pete if she wanted. I tried to convince myself it was fine. That maybe, just maybe, we'd stumbled into something good. But as I was leaving, Emily grabbed my hand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I heard him on the phone. "Mr. Morgan." He said Dad's name. He said, "Paul's kid." My stomach clenched. My dad's name isn't Paul, but close enough, Mark Paulson. Nobody outside our family ever used that full name. I tried to brush it off for her sake, but inside, alarms were blaring. That night, I parked down the street from the Morgans' house. I told myself I was being paranoid. But just after midnight, a car pulled up. A man got out and went inside. He wasn't there long, 10 minutes at most. When he came back out, I froze. I knew that face. He was one of the men who used to hang around Dad's place. One of the ones Emily had told me made her feel sick. My blood went cold. I called Wilson's direct line. No answer. I tried 911. The dispatcher said they'd send a patrol car in 30 minutes. I couldn't wait. I stormed up to the Morgan's door and pounded on it until Mr. Morgan answered, annoyed. "She's sleeping," he said. "Come back tomorrow." I pushed past him. Mrs. Morgan was sitting on the couch, wringing her hands. "Where's Emily?" I demanded. Silence. I ran upstairs, checking bedrooms. Empty. When I came back down, Mrs. Morgan was crying. Mr. Morgan was red-faced, shouting at me to get out. Finally, she broke. "Your father called. He said there was a misunderstanding. He said he just needed to talk to her. So we let him take her." The room spun. "You what?" My voice cracked. "He said he was her father, Mrs. Morgan whispered. "He promised it would be okay." By the time the cops arrived, Emily was gone again. It wasn't Wilson this time, it was Officer Bryant, a younger guy with a buzz cut who'd brushed me off before. He acted like I was wasting his time until Mrs. Morgan admitted it herself. Then he finally took notes. But the damage was done. Emily was back in Dad's hands. I sat in my car after they left, numb. Where would he take her? The cabin was blown. Our old apartment was too obvious. And then I remembered something Mom had told me in that prison visit. About a storage facility Dad used to use. A place the cops never found. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I pulled up outside the facility. Chain link fence, keypad entry, rows of metal doors stretching into the dark. No code. No way in. Except at the back, I found a tear in the fence. Just big enough to squeeze through. My shirt ripped on the wire, but I didn't care. Inside, I walked the rows, scanning numbers, heart pounding. Then I saw it. Unit 227. Light glowed from beneath the door. Voices inside. One of them, Dad's. I gripped the broken broom handle I'd found near the dumpster, the only weapon I had. But before I could move, headlights swept across the lot. A police cruiser pulled in. Officer Bryant got out. And he walked straight to Unit 227. He knocked 3 times in a pattern, like a code. The door rolled up. Dad stepped out. They shook hands. Bryant handed him an envelope, cash, by the looks of it. Dad counted it, nodded, and disappeared inside again. Bryant drove off without a word. And suddenly everything made sense. Why the cops moved so slowly. Why Dad got bail so easily. Why every step forward felt like 2 steps back. He had people on the inside. For the first time in my life, I realized the truth. It wasn't just my dad. The whole system was against me. And Emily was trapped inside that unit. I waited until Bryant's cruiser disappeared down the road, my grip tight around the broom handle. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Through the thin metal door, I could still hear Dad's voice. He wasn't just talking, he was angry. Snatches of words bled through, loose ends, take care of it, problem. I knew who the problem was. Me. And I knew Emily was in there with him. I walked up to the door, every nerve in my body screaming. I knocked 3 times, copying Bryant's pattern. The voices inside stopped. The door rattled, then slowly rolled up. And there he was. My dad. His eyes widened when he saw me. For a split second, I thought I had the jump on him. I swung the broom handle, catching him on the shoulder. He stumbled, cursing, but recovered fast. Inside the unit, Emily was curled up in the corner, her face streaked with tears. "Run to me!" I shouted. She started to move, but Dad lunged, grabbing her and yanking her in front of him like a shield. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" he growled, his arm locked around her. I raised the broom handle again, but he reached behind him and pulled out a pistol. My stomach dropped. "Here's how this is gonna go," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "You're gonna walk out of here. Get in your car. Keep driving until you hit the coast. You start a new life. You forget Emily. You forget me. If I ever see you again, I'll put you in the ground." Emily whimpered. My hands trembled so hard the broom handle almost slipped from my grip. Then I caught her eyes. And for the first time all night, I saw something in them that wasn't fear. It was fire. She gave me the smallest nod. Without warning, she stomped on his foot. "Hard!" He yelped, loosening his grip just enough. She twisted free and bolted toward me. I hurled the broom handle at him as a distraction, grabbed her, and dove behind a stack of boxes. The gunshot cracked like thunder. Wood splintered inches above my head. "You're making this worse," he screamed. "There's no way out except through me." He wasn't wrong. The only exit was the door, and he was between us and it. Then I spotted it, a small window high on the back wall. Too small for me. But maybe, just maybe, Emily could fit. I whispered the plan to her. Her face went pale, but she nodded. On 3, I lifted her up. Another shot rang out, sparks flying as the bullet ricocheted off a metal shelf. She scrambled through the window. For a second her foot stuck, then she kicked free and disappeared into the night. Now it was just me and him. His gun clicked empty. I heard the metal snap of him reloading. That was my chance. I sprinted out from behind the boxes and slammed into him. We crashed to the concrete, the gun skittering across the floor. We grappled, rolling, fists flying. He was stronger, fueled by rage. He pinned me, his hands clamping around my throat. "I should have done this years ago," he hissed. His grip tightened. Black spots danced in my vision. This was it. This was how it ended. And then, crack. His weight slumped off me. Through blurred eyes, I saw Emily standing over him. She was holding a fire extinguisher. Her hands were shaking, but she was still standing. Still fighting. "I called Deputy Wilson," she said, her voice trembling. "He's coming. The real police. Not Bryant." Dad groaned, trying to push himself up. I tackled him one last time. All the years of pain, of abandonment, of watching Emily suffer, everything came pouring out. I hit him until my knuckles bled, until his body finally went limp. Breathing, but unconscious. We stumbled outside together, both shaking. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing louder. For the first time, I believed we might actually be okay. Wilson arrived minutes later with backup. They cuffed Dad, called an ambulance for me, and whisked Emily away to be checked out. When Ramirez from CPS showed up, she told me something I never expected. She was recommending I get emergency custody back permanently, if the court agreed. For once, the system wasn't against us. That night, at the hospital, Emily fell asleep in the chair next to my bed, clutching that one-eared rabbit. I couldn't stop staring at her. After everything, after Mom, after Dad, after the lies and kidnappings and the bruises and the nights of terror, she was still here. Still alive. Still mine to protect. And as much as I wanted to believe it was over, I knew one thing for sure. Dad's words were still echoing in my head. This isn't over.